about climate change, and we heard about an initiative called Earth Strike International. The goal of Earth Strike International was to, by September 27th of that year, hold an international general strike in the name of the climate. It was an ambitious goal, especially considering the fact that we had about 9 months to plan this. And so, not being not being worried about the amount of work that we were about to bite off, we decided to get organizing. And so it was the four of us to begin with. And our first protest drew 7 people, the 4 organizers that we started with, and 3 other people that we were able to rope in. By September 27th of the same year, we had 350 or more members attending our general strike for the climate in Vernon. And so that begs the question, how do these things happen? And the best answer is that these things happen when we make them happen. Climate movements, movements generally, do not materialize out of need, they materialize out of organization. The climate movement is one that has a very great need. That doesn't mean that there is going to be a mass climate movement. For there to be a movement, there needs to be organizers, and there need to be people leading the charge. Having great social pressure behind something is wonderful to get the ball rolling. That's how we grew. In a very short amount of time, we went from having our 4 original members to double digits, and then triple digits shortly thereafter. We were able to put ourselves in the public eye, mainly through actions such as protests. Other important actions, such as fundraisers, were held. But we tried to really capitalize on every ounce of media attention we could. And that is one of the main ways we were able to grow our membership so quickly, is because we were able to increase public awareness, particularly in the schools, where we had sympathetic teachers, particularly social studies and science teachers, who understand, both from a social aspect and from a scientific aspect, the imminent threat that climate change poses to our society. And so by tapping into sympathetic fields in teaching, in public administration, getting outreach and support from elected officials, we were able to really get our organization off the ground. A lot of organizations will start strong with optimistic hopes, but they will hit a wall and they will die out with a handful of members. We were determined that we would not let our Strict Vernon suffer that fate and go down that road. And then no matter what it took, in the face of time and tide, we would continue to fight on. And that we did. And it was a success because of the amount of effort that was put into community outreach, the amount of effort that was put into really making sure that no matter what, we continue to fight. One issue that we had with COVID-19, of course, is that, as I've been talking this whole time about how we've been able to capitalize off of media attention and use that to our advantage through protest, during this period of COVID-19, we haven't been able to hold protests. We're climate activists because we believe in science. And right now, the science is telling us that it is not safe to hold public gatherings. And we wholeheartedly agree, and we would much rather not put our communities at risk. Of course, we're fighting for climate justice because we want to reduce the risk to our communities, municipal, regional, provincial, federal, and globally. And so the Fly Your Flag, the Fly the Flag campaign, it was an action created originally by staff and students at WL Seton Secondary School, and it was our response to COVID-19. How can we continue to raise public awareness? How can we continue to fight despite the upheaval of our way of life? And so the Fly Your Flag campaign was essentially a syncretism between spirituality and spiritual practices and climate justice. And it manifested as what we see still today outside of McDonald Park. And so the essence of the project is that involved community members will write their hopes for climate justice on small pieces of fabric, our flags. And those flags would be tied to the fence at McDonald Park on 27th Street in Vernon, a very high traffic area. And it was used to generate awareness principally for the Vernon Municipal Climate Action Plan, but it was also used to generally keep the idea of climate justice on the agenda. We recognize that we are in times that are very dangerous and new for all of us. However, that doesn't mean that climate justice can take a back seat. It can never not be an agenda item. It is the most pressing issue of our generation, I would dare to say. And by failing to address it right now, we are creating vastly worse problems for us in the future. And so, even during COVID 19, and I'd say especially because of COVID 19, we have a real chance to create a recovery from something that has so deeply devastated our country. And it's not just our country. I recognize, and we at Airstrike Vernon recognize, that COVID 19 has devastated the world, and in very disproportionate ways. In Canada, it looks like small businesses shutting down. A lot of them are being threatened right now. It looks like economic upheaval. It looks like people losing their careers, their ways of life. And so there needs to be a recovery from this. The Fly Your Flag campaign, of course, is trying to keep climate action and climate justice on the agenda so that when we do get into the phase of recovery, we can have a recovery that is meaningful. We don't want to return to normal. I keep seeing that phrase, return to normal, all the time. But normal wasn't working for us. Normal is something that should have never been normalized, in my opinion. There are people who are working multiple jobs constantly to try to get food on the table and try to keep a roof over their head, providing for their families, and that's not okay. We need to find a way that we can build back better. And we need to find a way that we can really put into place a green recovery that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. And so by running these actions that are still compatible with the public health situation, particularly with public health orders, we can continue to keep climate action on the agenda. And so, of course, with new activities, we have to find new ways to get people involved. Our old methods of protest weren't working in this current situation, and we recognized that, and so we had to get a little creative. This creativity manifests in different ways. You have people who are artists, who are making these beautiful flags and putting them up. You have community outreach organizers, such as myself, who are doing the same exact thing that we did pre-COVID. And that's reaching out to community members who might be interested, who want to get involved, and really getting their support to take action on this. You have teachers who are telling their classes. You have the media, still, as always, covering our fight and ensuring that the public knows what's happening. And it's this collection of different roles of everyone in a community working together for a common goal in some united front, you could say, that really gets us closer to our goals. And we were able to get people involved from a wide variety of aspects, from a wide variety of walks of life, who had a huge amount of diversity of thought. We had huge support from the municipal government. We had committees working on climate action. We had people helping us through the bureaucratic procedures as well. Of course, if you're going to hang up a bunch of small flags on a public fence, you need to get a permit for that. And so we had assistance with dealing with Vernon's municipal bureaucracy. And that was really essential, that kind of support from within and from without. Community pressure working with sympathetic individuals and sympathetic institutions to really try to make this happen. We had businesses who were in support of us. We had church groups who signed a letter. Again, Trinity United, the church that closed for the general strike. For that general strike, they had dozens of members sign a petition calling for climate justice and standing in support with our movement. And so it's not just students. I understand that for the longest time, the climate justice movement in recent years has been dominated by the youth. And that's entirely valid. I've always said myself, the youth are the generation that have the most to lose by failing to take meaningful climate action. And that still rings true, but that doesn't mean that it's just our fight, it's everyone's fight. Climate action is something that needs to happen internationally, because climate change, much like COVID-19, does not care about borders. It's an international problem, and it requires international solutions, with us working in harmony for once. And so by being able to pull together this diverse coalition under people who are willing to get the work done, we can really see meaningful steps towards our goals.